Well, I didn't think it'd take me a long time before I finally make a second episode about my character analysis video. Considering the last one and the first episode I did about character analysis, which was about Sash Lilac from Freedom Planet, which was 1 year ago. Holy shit. Yeah, so really 1 year ago, well probably maybe a year and a half ago, I don't know, I made my first episode of my series that I was hoping to do more of, but unfortunately stopped for some reason. And it was the first episode I did for my series, and it was analyzing characters. And originally it was going to be like video game characters and such, but I think I could analyze like other characters too, from like comics or movies or anything really. But yeah, last year the first episode I did was analyzing Sash Lilac. Now I will admit, I know it's not perfect because, you know, back then, yes, I would have, okay, like back then, like I could have got gameplay footages for that video, but the problem is, during the time, the internet was not that good, so it takes a long time to upload these clips and such. Well, at least the private clips, at least, to get these footages and such. But now, you know, better internet, so now I can actually go ahead and actually upload longer video footages, at least private ones, way faster and such, so I can actually show gaming footages while analyzing these characters nowadays, which is good news. So, that's all I gotta say for this video. But before we get started, what's up everybody? Whosoever Studios is here with another banger of a video, and welcome to the second episode of my character analysis series. Last episode, I talked about Sash Lilac from Freedom Planet, and now, in episode 2, I'm actually going to be talking about another video game character, and that is the Commando from Risk of Rain. Now, the Commando is obviously, you know, he's technically the main antagonist. Jesus Christ, that's what happens when I don't have scripts. He's a main protagonist of the said game, Risk of Rain. And no, I'm not going to say franchise, because there's only 2 fucking games about Risk of Rain, which is Risk of Rain and Risk of Rain 2. Or in that case, it's Risk of Rain 1 and 2, but I'm getting off topic. So, the Commando from Risk of Rain. I'm going to be talking about his gameplay in both games, which is Risk of Rain 1 and 2. And I'm going to explain, and I might explain about his lore and such as well, considering there's like barely any much lore about him, but it's whatevs. And I'm also going to be talking about, you know, his first ever appearance and such, obviously. So we're going to get right into talking about the Commando from Risk of Rain. Alright, so the first thing we're going to be talking about is, well, his first appearance. Obviously, his first appearance is at Risk of Rain 1. And you really see him, really when you start the game for the first time, he's really your first choice of what character to play as. Like, really, as soon as you start the game for the first time, this is really the first character that you can play as. And when you first start the game, you cannot play as any other character. You have to pretty much just play as only the Commando until you end up unlocking other characters. So Commando is really just a starter character when it's your first time playing Risk of Rain 1. Yeah, that's really all I gotta say though. Like, I mean, I am going to talk about how his gameplay is in both Risk of Rain games. However, for this session about Risk of Rain 1, I'm not really going to talk about the lore about this character, because there's really no lore about either Commando or any of the characters in Risk of Rain 1. Except for the freaking ending you get when you beat the game. But I'll talk about the ending in a moment. But yeah, there isn't really any story or lore about the Commando. He's just a playable character. So the only thing I'm going to really talk about is how he plays and how his abilities work and such, which is pretty self-explanatory. The Commando is characterized by long range and mobility effective use of his tactical dive will grant increased survivability while suppressive fire deals massive damage. FMJ can then be used to dispose of large mobs. And obviously we're talking about his abilities here. So his first ability is double tap, which is, well, it's literally just his basic attack. Shoot twice for 2 times 60% damage. Then we got his second ability, Full Metal Jacket. Shoot through enemies for 230% damage, knock them back. Then there's Tactical Dive, which makes you roll forward a small distance, and you cannot be hit while rolling, which is really good because you can use it to dodge attacks pretty much. Then there's Suppressive Fire, which is also a pretty good ability he's got. Fire rapidly, stunning and hitting nearby enemies for 480% damage. These abilities by himself alone are actually really good. His basic attack is, whatever's. Full Metal Jacket is obviously a laser beam that can penetrate through, well, any freaking enemy that comes to your path. And then there's the roll ability, which obviously you can roll and you cannot take damage while rolling. Then there's his other ability, which you actually fire your weapon like crazy at both directions. Which it doesn't tell you that, by the way, when you use that. Suppressive Fire, whatever it's called. Suppressive Fire does not tell you, like, the description of that ability does not tell you that you fire at both directions. Because, like, that's really what it does. Yes, you fire like crazy, but you also fire at both directions too. Like, if there's both enemies surrounding you, you'll actually use Suppressive Fire, and it fires at both directions, which, again, the description in the game doesn't freaking tell you that. But, anyways, that's really all I gotta say about how his gameplay is. He's a basic character, obviously, considering he's the first character you start off with, but he's pretty good despite being basic at best. That's really all I gotta say for Commandos and freaking Risk of Rain 1. I will talk about the ending, though, of Risk of Rain 1, however. The ending is pretty much one of the more basic endings I've seen in a video game. Once you defeat the final boss and escape, you get a cutscene along with a text that reads, "And so he left with everything but his humanity." And that's really it. And it just shows, like, the scenery of the chaos you committed throughout the last level. And that's just about it, really. There isn't much to it. And I think there's another... Yeah, no, that's really about it. There isn't really much to the ending. It just... You escape. Congratulations, you beat the game. I mean, let's be honest. This is Risk of Rain 1 we're talking about. Lore isn't really its focus at the time. Like, let's be honest. Like, freaking... I mean, yeah, just Risk of Rain 1, like, during Risk of Rain 1 at least, lore wasn't really its focus. And, like, lore wasn't really a focus of Risk of Rain until Risk of Rain 2 came along, when characters have, like, their own backstories and such whenever you beat the game as each of the different characters. Like, if you beat Risk of Rain 2 as a certain character, you can unlock their backstory and stuff to look at it to see what it's like. But, yeah, that's really what I gotta say about Commando in Risk of Rain 1. There isn't really much to him, really. There's no story about him. There's just... The only thing I can talk about is just how he plays in the game and his first appearance. Yeah. That's just all I gotta say about good old Commando. Now, we can get to Risk of Rain 2. Finally, I get to talk about Risk of Rain 2, my favorite game of the two-parter franchise. Anyways, yeah, Risk of Rain 2. So, there is actually, like, at least some story that did surround the character himself, the Commando. Unlike the first game, which barely had any fucking story at all about this character, we actually get to know some story that involves this character. So, we're going to be talking about, well, the story that is set around this character. The first thing I'm going to mention is the intro cutscene. We start off this intro cutscene where a ship is approaching some kind of planet. And And we have a character actually talking to the Commando, explaining that the planet is all, well, basically the entire planet is all messed up, and there's no survivors. Then we get to the end of the intro cutscene where Commando just starts sitting there, not responding anymore. And when the other character tried to talk to Commando more, asking him a question, no response. And I guess that's a sign that the Commando is going right into the action with no questions asking or anything. I guess. I don't know. But this intro cutscene is interesting. At least this intro cutscene at least shows that there is some kind of story involved. Especially when it involves, well, the character you start off as, the Commando. And there isn't really much said there, but I just want to talk about the intro cutscene because it's nice. But yeah, that's at least something I can talk about the Commando for. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is his abilities. Now, unlike Risk of Rain 1, where you only had, like, what, 4 abilities, Risk of Rain 2 is actually the same. However, in Risk of Rain 2, you can actually unlock extra abilities for certain characters by doing certain tasks. Let's go over his abilities in Risk of Rain 2. So, first off, we got Double Tap, which is just his basic firing attack. We got Phase Round. Fire a piercing bullet for 300% damage, deal 40% more damage every time it passes through an enemy. Then there's Tactical Dive, which, of course, roll or short distance. Then there's Suppressive Fire. Yeah, pretty much his abilities are just exactly the same as they are in the first game. Now, I'm not going to go into much about his extra abilities you can unlock because I never unlocked them. I cannot, wow, holy shit. I can, however, talk about one ability that I did unlock for him. And that ability is Tactical Slide. Basically, slide on the ground for a short distance, you can fire while sliding. So basically, it's just a better tactical roll. It's basically way better than tactical roll. And I don't remember how you unlock this, but I know you gotta do certain tasks to unlock said abilities. But yeah, there are some other abilities you can unlock, but I can only talk about this because it's the only one I unlocked. And I haven't unlocked the other ones because I didn't really, bother to try to unlock these. But I can at least talk about this extra ability, Tactical Slide. So, how is his playstyle in Risk of Rain 2? Well, it's exactly the same as he is in the first game. Because, again, he's got the same abilities and such, the same stats, the same abilities. He's pretty much the same as he was in the first game. However, it can be different when you're using the different abilities you unlocked. Because once you unlock, some of the better abilities, then he actually feels different to play as. But if you're just using his basic abilities, then yeah, he's just exactly how he is in the first game. Yeah, that's really all I can really talk about for how his gameplay works. Risk of Rain 2, I mean, it's really just the same, pretty much, as in Risk of Rain 1. Now let's talk about the next thing. The lore. Yes, Risk of Rain 2 has some lore behind the characters. And basically, you can only unlock certain lore for certain characters if you beat the game as said character. Since I beat the game as Commando, I unlocked his backstory, and I'm going to read it to you all out loud. The soldier ducked, barely getting under cover as the wall behind him exploded. His head was pounding, his muscle aching, but now was not the time for rest. He counted the seconds. The mounted missile launchers always took a few seconds to recalibrate, and he took advantage of that time. Through the sounds of gunfire and chaos, he heard a small click as the enemy missile platform prepared for a second strike. Recognizing the opportunity, the soldier jumped up from behind the wall and fired his pistol, landing a shot straight between the eyes of the platformer's operator. His shoulder tightened as he braced for recoil. Now was not the time to rest. Glancing down the battlefield, there was only a few more enemy platforms to take, and this front will be secured. But before he could move to join his platoon, he received a notification on the heads-up display on his helmet. You have been reassigned. Report to command for your new assignment. Looks like the time to rest wasn't coming anytime soon. So the Commando is pretty much a soldier who is constantly doing his job, pretty much. And and from what I can tell, sorta, he clearly wants to rest. But he can't. He has to keep doing his duties no matter what. Pretty much, yeah, he's a soldier who really has to keep going for whatever reason, I don't know. Again, I mean, that's all I can really explain. Like, at least the notes in his backstory. Yeah, he's really a soldier just doing his duties, and he cannot stop doing his duties. Even if he wants rest, he can't. That's all I can really say about, at least his backstory and such. And I'm not going to really go on about the ending, because it's pretty much the same as it was in the first game. The only difference between that is that in the second game, the final boss is Mithrix. Spoilers alert, by the way, I'm sorry. But yeah, you defeat the final boss, Mithrix. And yeah, you pretty much just go to your ship and you defend it, and then you escape the moon, and you get the same text as what happens when you beat the first game. And so he left with whatever the fuck the rest said. I don't know. I'm not going to go too much about the ending, because it's practically the same ending as how it is in the first game. But instead of like escaping like a freaking planet or something, you escape a moon. But yeah, that's all I can really say. I know there's other endings you can do with Risk of Rain 2, but it mainly depends on like the DLCs and such. But I'm mainly going to talk about the main game's ending. But yeah, I'm not going to go on too deeper into that. Yeah, that's all I gotta really say about. That's pretty much all I really gotta say about this character, the Commando. There really isn't much about this character, really. Like, Risk of Rain 1, he pretty much didn't even have a freaking backstory. Risk of Rain 2, he at least had some backstory, but you can only read his backstory when you beat the game as the Commando. After that, that's just really it. There isn't really much else to this character. That's just all I really gotta say about this character, really. I can talk about another thing, though, and even talk about some other things about this character. Let's talk about his design. His design isn't bad. Basic design, but not bad. I mean, let's be honest, most of the characters do look basic, but other than that, really not a bad design. I'm digging the design of the Commando. Just your average Space Marine soldier. I also want to mention some extra thing about this character. He actually appeared in another game, which is Dead Cells. In this game, Commando is just a skin that you can unlock for, well, the Beheaded. And to unlock this skin, in Risk of Rain 1, there's like these statues, I believe. And when you click on the statues, you have to destroy those black imps. And when you do that, you get a reward. It's pretty much the same fucking thing in Dead Cells. You find some strange statue, you activate it, you kill all the imps as beheaded, boom, you unlock the Commando outfit. That's just about it, really. There isn't really anything else about his appearance in Dead Cells. He's just a skin, pretty much. But I thought I mentioned it because, it's cool that the Commando appears in another game. Not to mention, I also want to bring out that the Beheaded is also in Risk of Rain 2 as well, as a skin for the Mercenary as well, which I'll show the screenshot right here. I know it's unnecessary to really mention the Beheaded being in Risk of Rain 2, but I thought I'd bring this up too because, again, it's just really cool. Freaking Dead Cells is another indie game that I have played for a long time, and I love Dead Cells, so seeing two of my favorite indie games, seeing two indie games I absolutely love collab, really awesome, really awesome. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's nothing else I need to say about this character, the Commando. And that was my second episode, the character analysis series. And it turned out to be the Commando for Risk of Rain. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, that's good. I don't know when I'll make a third episode about a character analysis, but at least I got to finally make a second episode after, what, fucking episode 1, which came out last year when I was talking about Sash Lilac from Freedom Planet. But anyways, that's all I really gotta say. Yeah, I'll see you guys in next time. Bye-bye.